Welcome to Community Partners Interview, where we explore the organizations, opportunities, and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Lilly Cereghini, and you're listening to Voices for Ability Radio. All abilities, all the time. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Liba, the Chief Executive Officer from Variety Manitoba. Variety Manitoba steps in where government, healthcare, school divisions, and other funding sources end to provide proven solutions to enrich the lives of children in Manitoba's living with special needs and experiencing economic disadvantage. Variety Manitoba's vision is to be the charity of choice in Manitoba that helps every child in need so they can reach their full potential. Thank you for joining us today, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Lily. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit more about you and what inspired you to work with Variety Manitoba. Why work with people with disabilities at all?
Well, I'll try and make this short, but it's probably not the easiest story to tell. So I actually worked in broadcasting from my time in high school all the way through university and into my adulthood. And so part of my job, I was working in promotion and marketing as a manager, was to connect with all sorts of different community groups. And so I guess I was fortunate enough to grow up in a house where I saw my parents volunteering for organizations and donating to them. And so I really saw a lot of value in being able to try and provide some support to these organizations that a lot of times had very limited resources of their own, right? And so when I left that industry, right around Y2K, I've worked in charity forever. And so that's part of the story. But the other part of the story that relates specifically to Variety and whatnot is that we'd moved back to Manitoba from Alberta and an opportunity arose. And I'm fortunate enough to have known this organization since 1978 when it was founded. My dad was one of the people that helped bring Variety to Manitoba. And so I can remember being a 10-year-old kid going to the telethons that we had in those days and meeting all of these great kids and just seeing, how the community really rallied behind them and was really trying to provide, a better life, better opportunities for kids in those days that were living with disabilities. And so, there's lots of kids that in today's world are living with similar challenges, but obviously, the world around us has evolved a lot too in terms of doctors' ability to diagnose and so on and so forth. So the kids that we're working with today, although they have lots of similar challenges, are quite different than the kids that we were helping as an organization back in 1978 when I was voluntold by my father to help out at this telethon.
While doing my research, I noticed that you have some programs that you hold. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the programs that Variety Manitoba offers?
Absolutely. So we're quite focused, I would say, as an organization, because I think that if you have a focus, I think you end up getting to doing a better job, I guess, of whatever it is that you're doing. And so really at a high level, we really only have two programs. We have our special needs program, and our special needs program itself consists of the bulk of it consists of what we refer to as family grants. And so that's when families come to us as an organization and they're looking for some help to provide programs, services, or maybe specialized equipment for their child. And so that program is fairly rigorous, I would say, in the sense that the process for families to apply is simple, but like how we evaluate all of those requests that come in and how those cases are adjudicated is quite detailed, because when we make those choices, we want to make sure that we're making the right choices for the money that we have in those days. And so, families, that come to us, their child needs to have a diagnosis of a permanent physical or cognitive disability, and they need to basically request something that we would refer to as evidence-based, so something that actually there's a science behind the effectiveness or efficacy of it, that item or that service is actually going to help their child overcome whatever that challenge might be that they're facing. And so we're really proud of that program. That's a foundation of us as an organization locally. But our special needs program also has some recreation programming built into it as well. So a couple of things there. One would be we run a program called Volt Hockey that exists in Southern Ontario as well, and in Alberta in Canada. And so it's an adaptive form of hockey that uses these super cool looking carts that can cruise around a gym floor at, I think, almost 16 kilometers an hour. And so it's an adaptive form of hockey. And so we've got a recreation league that we have here in Winnipeg, and we help the community of Brandon, which is 2 hours west of Winnipeg, get their program off the ground there as well. And it's a super great opportunity for these kids because a lot of the kids that are on our teams might not have an opportunity to play a team sport otherwise. And so the sport itself was developed in Europe, and it was developed specifically for kids or people with upper body limitations in terms of their mobility. But I can tell you, just based on last year's players and the players that have already signed up again for this year, it is kids that are living with all different disabilities that are on our teams, and it is exciting to watch, to see the way the kids learn to, again, work with one another, to see how excited they are when they score a goal in the game. We've got cheering fans in the stand every week, so it's really fun. And the other part of that program is a big bike camp that we bring into Manitoba at the beginning of July every year. And so, part of us as an organization, and part of what you talked about, is stepping in where others aren't there. And so when another organization in our community is doing a great job of something, like, for example, Adaptive Bikes here in Manitoba, there's another organization called the Children's Rehab Foundation, and they do an amazing job with the adaptive bikes. So, we get the odd request for one, but we really want to sort of steer clear of there and find our own unique space. So we're teaching kids living with disabilities how to be able to ride conventional step through two-wheel bikes. And every July, we bring 80 kids out to a location, 40 a week for 2 weeks. And we run the largest bike camp of this type in North America. And in fact, this year, which was phenomenal, our success rate for getting kids on their bikes at the end of the 2 weeks was over 93%. And so these kids have never had the ability to be able to ride that bike independently on their own before. And so the program that we bring up to help us with this out of the US just does such a great job. And again, it's super heartwarming. I didn't mention Camp Brereton, Varieties Camp Brereton. So we're fortunate enough to have a facility that we own in Whiteshell Provincial Park here in Manitoba, which sort of straddles the Ontario border. And it's a seasonal overnight camp. And so it's a little different in the sense that it's not just kids that are living with special needs or critical illness that attend that camp. And it is a group facility. So it's all kids that are alike, that are with us for a week. But we also have lots of kids from maybe economically disadvantaged backgrounds or at-risk backgrounds that come out as groups too. So we've got lots of Indigenous clients out there. We've got lots of newcomers to Canada that come out there, and then of course we have lots of kids that are parts of organizations that are either dealing with critical illness or special needs. And what those sort of two distinct user groups get out of our camp is completely different, right? Like for the kids that are living with special needs, it's all about building independence for themselves. It's about making friends. It's about learning things with a like peer group. It's about not having to see that specialist that they might see every week in their lives. So it really is beneficial. But developing motor skills, anyways, it's wonderful. And then for those kids, sort of that are at risk or in economically disadvantaged situations, like it's tough for those families of those kids to make ends meet. And so, no one's fault ever in terms of this, but oftentimes the child doesn't get the attention and the encouragement that they need, and lots of these kids are also dealing with food security issues on a daily basis. So when they come out, they get fed three great meals a day, and yeah, it's just wonderful, right? Lots of encouragement, right? Lots of pats on the back, lots of you can do it, to let all of the kids who go to camp dream bigger.
Amazing. It sounds like sport speed for all seasons. And you actually just answered my next two questions. I was going to ask you about your camps and about Volt hockey and how they both work, but you are very thorough.
Yeah, that tends to be a bit of a problem sometimes when you ask me one question. By the end of it, I might have answered too many of your other questions. But
No,
yeah, I mean,
not a problem at all.
we've got a great team here, small, efficient staff team, and we're all sort of brought together by three core values as a group, and those are the same three core values that we push outwardly into the community, right? And collaboration is one of them, right? And so, again, as any group of people working together, we need to be able to collaborate effectively if we're planning on doing that in the community, right? And as you would know, I mean, the sort of the landscape of disability is just so complex, right? And so we wouldn't need to be there doing any of this stuff if our governments and our healthcare systems and our education systems were providing the things that the kids that we help need. And so, that collaboration piece, we need to be able to collaborate with all the stakeholders, other organizations that are, disability or disease specific. And so that's huge, right? And the other is sort of this idea, which is part of our logo, which is a heart, which is compassion, right? And so, I mean, none of us have walked, even a step, never mind a mile in the shoes of any of the families that we're helping. And so that's got to be something that comes from within a person, right? Being able to not only appreciate, I guess, what we have, but also feel compassion, for others and the challenges that they have, are facing in life, and to want to help and make a big difference. And so, if we're an organization that outwardly in the community is about compassion, we've all got to be, wired that way as people individually. And then last but not least is inclusion. And inclusion is a simple word, but it's also complicated, right? Or complex, because there's parts of inclusion that we don't even think about. And, just as an example, diversity is a piece of inclusion, right? Like being able to be someone who, embraces diversity, right? And so again, as an organization and as staff and our volunteers and our board, this is what we're all about, right? Is understanding that, there's always a better outcome and a richer outcome when diversity is a part of it. And so inclusion is all about us being able to authentically represent some of the kids that are excluded the most in their day-to-day lives. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you need more than one color of thread to make a tapestry. If it's just one color of thread, it's just a blanket.
And that one color of thread gets pretty boring to look at after a while, right? And so, not to visualize the metaphor, because it's so much more complex than that, right? It's about, it's about demographics, right? It's about beliefs, right? And so all of that stuff, as an organization, we're there to embrace.
Absolutely. Now, with that said, are there any restrictions to joining Variety Manitoba, such as age, disability types, need for caregivers, family members only, things of that nature?
Well, as it relates to disability to begin with, no, right? As long as it is a diagnosed disability of any form, we're there for people. As an organization, we are focused primarily on children. That's our mandate. Not unlike the government systems around us, you transition from the children's portion of our government services to adult at 18. So certainly, when it comes to our special needs program and the grants that we provide families specifically to help out with great things like applied behavior therapy or speech and language pathology, right? Or specialized equipment, the accessible communication. stuff that is geared specifically for kids that are under the age of 18. Some of those recreation opportunities that I mentioned, the Volt hockey and our bike camp, we open those up so that more of a traditional federal government definition of youth, right, is there for that, and there's limited recreation opportunities for all people that are living with disabilities. And so, I would always just say or encourage anybody, even, if their loved one is over the age of 18, to just reach out to us, because chances are we'll gladly accept them into whatever it is that they're looking to do. And, as it relates to the camp groups, again, some of our camp groups do have campers that are over the age of 18, and we would never say to them, sorry, you can't bring these three people because, one's 19, 20, 21, whatever, right? I mean, again, inclusion is a part of it. And if they're part of that group, then they're part of the group that comes to our camp for that week.
For sure.
Did I miss any of them?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, good.
Without using any specific names of people, can you share a success story with me?
Oh, absolutely. So I often call our bike camp, I mean, I love everything that we do, but I often call our bike camp my favorite 2 weeks of the year. So since we brought this camp to Manitoba, I guess this was our fourth one. I make a point of being on site and working with the rider in each one of our sessions for each of the 2 weeks. So every year I get buddied up with a kid, and I'm an early morning person, so I typically end up with that first shift of the day sort of thing, where maybe we're a little light on volunteers. And so this year in particular, I was working with a young man who actually was 23, living with autism. And I can give you his first name because that doesn't give much away, right? So Evan. And he was just this wonderful, wonderful young man. And so we get a bit of a cheat sheet, all of the people that are helping the riders, right? Because we ask families or loved ones to fill out information. So I'd learned a few things about Evan through that, right? And so one of the things, for example, that Evan loves is colors, right? And so we started, going around because the first part of the program, you're on the specialized trainer and you're inside an arena without ice on it, with the concrete surface, and we're riding around and having a great time. And I just have this feeling that like he is super prepared and super motivated to do this. And so, I was not shocked to find out that we were the first ones to sort of, work our way off of the trainer. And by Wednesday of that week, he started riding a two-wheel independent bike. And, lots of different things can motivate kids to want to ride a bike. And like, I always just think of, maybe an outdated sort of, thought from when I was a kid, like riding a bike for me represented some freedom, right? Like I could get on my bike, I can ride away from home and visit with my friends and, get to other parts of the city that I would not have been able to otherwise. Anyways, and then I found out that Evan's motivation was he had a friend who rode a bike. And he was super motivated because he and Zora wanted to go out for bike rides during the summer. And mom and dad were there and they were excited. And they also wanted to be able to include Evan in bike rides moving forward. And of course, that's part of what this means for anybody that can learn to ride a bike, is it's also an inclusion mechanism, right? Like all those memories, suddenly you can go out and go for a bike ride for an ice cream in the summer or whatever. Anyways, and so literally by Friday morning, I didn't even need to be there anymore. We'd graduated to being outside on the Thursday. And by Friday morning, I just sat there and watched with Evan's mom, Evan riding this bike around the parking lot that we have cordoned off. And I was pretty excited. And mom was super excited, and she was FaceTiming people all week long, showing them how he was progressing and everything else. Anyways, mom was kind enough to then share with me some videos over the course of that weekend after Evan was done bike camp, where he was riding, the trail system of our city, and he was riding in his neighborhood. And he was, it was just, it literally looked like Evan had been riding a bike his entire life. That's how. And so, how can you not feel good about that, right? When when you recognize riding a bike is more than just a physical act of riding a bike, right? Like this was going to enable Evan to be able to go out for bike rides with his friend, that they would make memories together, that it again is helping Evan with his independence, and that he was going to be able to also create memories with his family moving forward, right? And so we hold that bike camp at the very beginning of summer, very intentionally, because we want again to encourage all the riders that are successful, and success in that program doesn't necessarily mean that you're out on your own. It means that you've stuck with it and you've progressed, quite frankly, but that they have an opportunity to keep on working away at it throughout all the way until winter rolls around in Manitoba, which sometimes is far too early. But there's no riding bikes unless you're diehard here in the wintertime. So there's just one example.
No, that's excellent. I mean, riding can be such a communal activity. You see all over Europe all the major sports rides, Tour de France, Volta de España, those sorts of things. And they intentionally make large groups of riders called the peloton. So what is the one thing that you see happening over and over again to individuals with disabilities that shouldn't be, and how do we put a stop to it?
I'll get a little heavy or controversial with you. So, our population in terms of the clients we serve really has significantly changed in the last, let's call it 5 years. And so, now 3 in every 4 kids that are looking for help, part of their diagnosis is a cognitive or intellectual disability. And so because those aren't diagnosed quite as easily or as early on as some other disabilities, our systems really have failed all of the families that we've helped that have got kids that are living with intellectual disabilities, right? And so, part of that economic disadvantage piece that we talked at the beginning is truly our belief that it doesn't matter which community in this city or in this province or in this country that you live in, families that have a child living with special needs have a relative economic disadvantage to their neighbors who might have able-bodied children, or a significant financial disadvantage maybe to those empty nesters, right? And so what happens here, and I've heard it repeated in Ontario and in BC and in Alberta, where Variety also has locations, is that diagnosis typically doesn't sort of even begin the process around that until a child is 12 to 18 months. Most families cannot afford to pay for a private diagnosis, so they're in the public system. The wait list to get a diagnosis in the public system is currently anywhere between 18 to 24 months. Once you have a diagnosis, our provincial government here is supposed to provide your child with accommodations to help them become school ready, so that when they go to kindergarten, they're as close to their peer group as possible. Well, all of those services that exist also have wait lists of about 18 to 24 months. So you do the math, worst case scenario, and more often than not, we hear about this from our families where, they recognize that their child needed some help. It took 2 years to get the diagnosis as to what it was that their child was living with in terms of a disability, so that they could then try and access services. And their child ends up going to school and kindergarten completely unprepared and completely behind the rest of their cohort, and then they become sort of the responsibility of our education systems. And our education systems are providing a couple of consultative visits a year with the child. None of them are practical visits where they're really working on things. And so that gap, that developmental gap that should have been addressed, just keeps on growing and growing and growing over the course of time. And so imagine how heartbreaking that would be for you as a parent of a child, to be advocating as strongly as you can for your child and getting nowhere. And so, again, sadly, that's a huge part of the reason why our organization exists, and the work that we do in today's world is related to helping those families and helping them providing them with the tools and the resources to get things back on track.
For sure, for sure. We have that problem in Ontario as well. It's a major problem here.
Well, right. And so, I mean, you know, I would say this, my real exposure to the world of disability at 10 years old. And, yes, we had some cool and innovative things that we were doing for kids back then. And certainly that's gone, off the charts in today's world, right? The therapies are far more advanced and specialized. The equipment has been continued to be developed and everything else. And all of that stuff is wonderful. But I like to look further down the road. And I look and I say to myself, what is the unemployment rate in our country for adults living with disabilities? Right? Because if all of our organizations that are working hard to do this with our limited resources aren't having an impact, then our system really is even more broken than we want it to be. And that's the thing, is that the unemployment rate in adults living with disabilities, the needle has not moved in probably since 1978. And so far too many of our children living with disabilities aren't being provided the resources and the accommodations that they need to help them reach their full potential. And as such, they that wonderful future state that I'd love to see for every kid, where there was employment opportunities that were meaningful for them, that were participation opportunities that are meaningful for them when they're adults. We just are not there yet, and not even close to being there, sadly.
Exactly. We need to collaborate on this, like as a group of communities. We really do. Like people with disabilities represent 27% of the population in Canada.
Correct, right? And so, we're almost talking a third of our population that we literally have not come up with any sort of a long-term solution to help address. And that needs to start, not with us as charities, quite frankly. I mean, the leadership can, but the investment in that needs to start with our government, and all the things that the government has to prioritize in terms of its spending.
Agreed. Are there any events coming up for Variety Manitoba?
Yeah, well, we do have an event. The next one would be likely, ways down the road. I think it's December 6th of this year. I'll just pull up the calendar on my phone to confirm that while we're chatting, but I'll describe what the event is while we're doing it. So again, one of the things that we do as an organization that's quite interesting that we started a number of years ago is an event called Winter Wonderland. And Winter Wonderland is a holiday party for kids, and so we focus almost exclusively for that event on kids living in those economically disadvantaged situations, because again, Manitoba has this dubious distinction of being, the child poverty capital of Canada. And so, as an example, last year we brought 1,400 kids together under the roof of RBC Convention Center for a hot lunch and entertainment and activities. And it's a give back that we do to the community to just, again, try and relieve some of the burdens that families are feeling. And so every kid that comes to that event walks away with a lovely gift bag at the end of it that contains some sort of a toy and practical items like mittens and scarves and toques, and some fun stuff like coloring books, or some treats. And most people celebrate some form of holiday around that time of the year, right? So this is not. There's a visit from commercial Santa, I'll call them, non-denominational, anything Santa that's there. The kids love that, and yeah, it's just, again, it's another, when you see the smiling looks on those kids' faces when they feel the love of the community surrounding them and telling them that they're important, that they matter, that they're significant. It's pretty neat to see. And, when I go out to events, fundraising events primarily, but, one of the things that kind of always disgusts me is the amount of food waste that are at all of these big events that we put on, conferences, conventions, dinners. I can tell you there's like almost zero food waste in this event, right? We've got, kids that are asking whether they can take home another lunch for their sibling, and anyways, it's just incredibly heartwarming. And we've got great partners aside from RBC that help us out there every year to make sure that really our costs on the event are next to nothing. And so I'm a bit of a as much as I'm collaborative, I'm also competitive, and I don't mean that in a mean-spirited way. So my team already knows that 1,400 was last year. This year we have to help even more kids than we did last year, and that's been the way that this lunch has evolved from when we started it 7 or 8 years ago.
Amazing. That's a 4-digit number of kids.
Correct.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we bill it as the largest holiday party for kids, in the city, right? And not that matters that it's the largest, because again, everything is scaled, right? And we're a small organization. We just happen to be really good at connecting our community partners all together for a common purpose, right? And so, this is something that we can do, right? And because kids don't understand. Kids don't understand why the fridge isn't full of all the wonderful food that they want to eat all the time. Kids don't understand why mom and dad tell them to put on another sweater because it's cold in the space that they live in, right? And so and kids don't understand if they have an expectation of some form of toy, why that toy, never is going to hit the top of the priority list very likely, right? And so we can just do a little bit like that at that time of the year in this community. We are brightening the lives of a lot of kids and their families, and like I said, most importantly, it's just that these kids all know that they matter, that they're loved, that they're worthy, deserving, that we believe in them.
Absolutely. If someone wanted to become a member or volunteer with Variety Manitoba or get more information about your institution, where can we go to look?
Yeah, so our website's real simple. It's Variety Manitoba, VARIETY, Manitoba all spelled out, MANITOBA.com. And so, there's lots of information there on programming. There's information on how people can volunteer in general. For people that are really, motivated and want to help out, and maybe join a committee on one of the subcommittees on our board, or they want to just come out and help at an event, whatever it is, they can find out for more information there, and they can always just even call us in the office if, for whatever reason, they have more questions that the website doesn't answer. And our phone number is 204-982-1050.
Thank you very much, Jeff. This has been a really amazing experience for me.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun. I hope your listeners have enjoyed what we've talked about, Lily, and we appreciate the opportunity.
It sounds like such a nice institution.
We try to be, right? We try to be.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Cheers.
You've been listening to an interview on Community Partners. I'm your host, Lilly Cereghini. And remember, folks, stick together because we are all in this together.